Hi, 'twas the day after Christmas, and all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even the mouse of your new computer. Anyway, wanted to wish all of you in the UK, Australia, Canada, Hong Kong, happy Boxing Day, and for those of you in the Netherlands, you get 2 days of Christmas. That's not quite fair. To that end, I have a question from the Netherlands. Martin, he asks a great question. Am I bad for having feelings of blame toward my partner for being infertile? Now, I'm not sure if Martin's infertile or his wife is, but I would assume by the question that maybe she's having problems and he's A-okay. So, Martin, I don't think it's bad. I mean, it's not a bad thing. It's a human thing to have frustration. And when we're frustrated, when we don't get the things we want or the things that we anticipate, when our expectations are thwarted, we sometimes do want to place blame. But blame can disappear with communication, and blame can disappear with help. So I would highly recommend that you go to one of the great physicians there in the Netherlands and to talk this matter over. And if you're still having trouble after meeting with a reproductive medicine specialist there, you and your partner may wish to talk to a mental health counselor. Next question is from Holt from Los Angeles, California. Is my semen yours when I donate? That's an interesting question. Well, I'm not sure to whom he's donating, but let's say that Holt is talking about a cryobank. For example, there's a huge cryobank in Los Angeles. It's called Cryobank of Los Angeles. So assuming that Holt is a young man who is wanting to donate semen, yes, the fact is that he will need to execute a consent form. In other words, he's going to have to give his permission to have that semen used for the conception of children, quite possibly elsewhere. For example, our clinic here in Florida commonly uses sperm from banks in California where Holt may be donating his semen. So he will sign off on that, and he will agree not to try to find out the identity of the people receiving those specimens or the clinics. He will also need to undergo some screening tests to make sure that he is free of any diseases and so forth. That's another show altogether, but yes, the answer in short is once you donate sperm or eggs, they belong to the facility to which you've donated. Okay, next question is from Janice in Detroit, Michigan. What happens to fertilized eggs, embryos, if a couple decides that they no longer want children? Well, this is a problem really all across the world because more and more and more IVF clinics have surplus embryos. And so we're trying to deal with what happens to the scores of thousands of eggs that have been fertilized, embryos that are not desired. Well, there are actually several options. One can donate those embryos to science, to research. Number two, those can be discarded. Number three, they can be donated to another couple, embryo donation. There are a couple of embryo donation centers in the United States. I'm sure they exist elsewhere. But yes, it is a growing problem. Thousands and thousands of surplus embryos. We have embryos in our own clinic that have been with us for more than 25 years, which means those parents are now well into their 50s or 60s even. So I anticipate this to be a growing problem. Now, one important note is that during the initial consultations with your doctor, you should have some disposition form signed. In other words, what are you going to do with your embryos if you don't use them? Do you want us to discard them? Do you want us to send them to a research facility? Or do you want to donate them to a cryo facility or to other couples? So you'll make that decision. Even what happens if you and your partner divorce, or what happens if one of you dies? So all those questions to be answered up front, then there are no questions in the actual event. All right, Karen from Kenner, Louisiana. Is there a way of choosing the sex of my baby? Gender selection. Absolutely. There are two main ways. And there is one, if you want to go to microsort.com, you can find an international program. Now, this is actually out of Fairfax, Virginia, but due to, I think, some legal entanglements, that program is no longer functional in the United States. I was one of the co-investigators with Dr. Edward Fugger there at Fairfax, Virginia, and for a number of years we were able to offer gender selection by a special sperm washing procedure. It turns out that the X chromosome in the sperm is about 2.8% heavier than the Y chromosome. So the female chromosome is bigger and heavier than the male-bearing chromosome. So what that means, of course, is that there can be a separation, and it's just a centrifugation. So they spin the sperm down, and then they basically tag them with a special stain, and then they go through a selection process. It takes about 6 or 7 hours. So that we had one couple, I'll never forget them, they went through this. They had 4 sons. They wanted a daughter very desperately, and they went through and they actually had a 5th son. So it works, if you want a daughter, it works about 92 to 93% of the time. They were in the 8%. And if you want a son, it works about 83% of the time, but it's not available in the United States. It is available in Guadalajara, Mexico, Mexico City, Northern Cyprus, and in Switzerland. So you can contact Microsort and see if that works. Now, the other way that is practiced throughout the country and through other countries is in vitro fertilization with checking the chromosomes to see if that embryo is a genetic male or a genetic female, and then placing that embryo back. Just a few years ago, there were only several clinics in the country offering that technique, and now that technique is offered in most regions of the country. It does, of course, pose at least one ethical question, and that is, what do you do with the embryos not desired? And many, especially ethnic couples, want a male and they want the son, and they will ask to discard all the female embryos, and that's an uncomfortable position for many of us in the field. All right, final question. A woman from Cary, C-A-R-Y, Cary, Illinois. At what point do we give up and move on to adoption? Well, that is a fantastic question, because I can't ever forget a couple I saw early in my practice who came to us. We were the 4th fertility program that they had seen, and they had done 15 IVF cycles. So that's a huge amount of money spent, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they ultimately did conceive. But when do you call it quits? Well, obviously that's a highly personal decision, but I always talk to my patients about frustration levels and what are your finances. So I don't really need to know the specifics of either of those, because I'm not really interested in their financial situation, but they need to set some goals. It has to be oriented towards time. In other words, we will give this the next 12 calendar months or the next 36 calendar months, or we will give this X thousands of dollars. But always have a backup plan. Know that you will only do this or that procedure, or know that adoption is in the works, or know that childlessness is a viable option. If you have your plan outlined, you're less likely to be disappointed. So when is it time to adopt? It's time to adopt when you're frustrated maximally and your finances have been depleted to a point of discomfort. These are great questions. I want to thank all 5 of you for sending these. I hope I answered them to your satisfaction. If not, write me some more. I'll be happy to amplify on these answers in a future episode. For the rest of you, thank you for joining me this year. It's been fun on this inaugural year of the Infertility Channel, and I wish you a happy holiday season, and I'll see you in the new year. Be sure to share this video with your friends and subscribe to catch all new episodes each week here on the Infertility Channel. Plus, follow us on Facebook and Twitter. I love hearing from you. Comment below or tell me what you want to see on future episodes by sending me an email to comments@infertilitychannel.org. Until next week.